Well,
Although we talked to Vincent and he says you're old school, coach, with a smile.
what does that mean?
I think he meant
That I'm old and I went to school?
I think he meant he appreciates the level of instruction and discipline, but you have quite a stable of running backs. What was your assessment of what you saw Saturday from your squad?
It was solid. Our guys played sound. There were very few mental errors. There were some that we got to get corrected. Our three main jobs. Number one is protect the football. And we were able to do that. The second thing, our second job is to protect the quarterback, and we did that pretty well. The third thing that our job is to extend plays. So, for example, if our line blocks a 4-yard play and we can only get 4 yards, then that's way below the bar. So we did not extend plays as well as I'd have liked to have seen, and that's one area that we continue to work on.
Andre, that term "old school" gets thrown around a lot, and I was wondering, in your mind, what does that mean when a younger guy talks about a coach being old school? You talked about Vincent's high school coach was also old school. What does it mean in your mind?
I think it means you tell the truth. I mean, you tell it the way it is. That was good. That wasn't good enough. That's not the bar. You just teach and coach and really just be yourself. Most guys coached the way they were coached. And, I played for Coach Maller and that staff in Indiana. So they were tough guys. But really the biggest thing you got to do is you got to be a great teacher. You got to be able to, sell the game plan through a conceptual standpoint. And then you got to somehow get your guys to play hard. And for Vince, the way I reach him may be differently than the way I reach Sibley. So you got to figure out which guy responds to what method best and go with that. Some guys you got to hug, some guys you got to be very stern with.
What are the biggest differences you see from Vince Davis as a freshman to Vince Davis as a sophomore?
Well, Vince was a good player as a freshman. He got hurt and set him back. But the biggest difference between Vince and all the guys is how much knowledge they've acquired. When you come in as a freshman, those guys come in June most of the time. And, that's about the time the coaches go on vacation. And then you come back, you start training camp. So really, when you get to training camp, if a kid gets 12 plays in practice, for example, he's probably only going to, at the best, do half of them right because they just don't know. The transition from high school to college, the volume of things that you are required to know is so much greater. And it takes time. And so kids memorize, they memorize things, but memorizing is not knowing you because until you know the whys of what you're doing, you really don't know. So through all the Zoom meetings we had when we couldn't be in front of them, we really focused on raising the knowledge of our players. And I think particularly in my room, those guys have done a good job.
Andre, go ahead, John.
Okay. I know it's just week one, but 5 rushing touchdowns within the red zone area, which was an area of concern, I guess, last year. How, as the running back coach, how kind of encouraged are you, I guess, at that commitment to the run in the red zone, and then knowing that your guys finished off those drives?
Well, last year, after losing some really good running backs and some really good linemen, our team was physically geared better to attack people through the air. We had receivers that were more ready to play at a play-winning football than the guys that were in my room, particularly with the offensive line. They were maturing. So now we got everyone back. We got a good group, a talented group of receivers. We got a quarterback back. Excuse me. We've got an offensive line that's been together now for a while, and of course the guys in my room. So I think Coach Whipple is more comfortable dialing up a run now. Last year you could dial up a run and get 2 yards, or you could drop back and throw it up to Tayseer or one of those guys, or Frenchie, who caught 100 balls. And if I was calling plays, I probably would have felt the same. And again, I think he feels more confident now that we can run the football, and hopefully it will be where we're a little more difficult to game plan and to handle because we should be a little more balanced.
You
Andre,
mentioned
is it,
you mentioned the injuries last year to the running backs. Do you feel more comfortable this year with the depth because with the additions of Daniel and Izzy?
I do. I feel like we've got enough guys that can play winning football and get through a season. Obviously, we only have 10 games left. It's different when you have 12 or 13 in a bowl game and hopefully a championship game. So we've got enough guys where I think we should be able to operate at a high level if we happen to lose a guy or two along the way with injury.
Andre, do you view it as purely riding the hot hand as to who is going to get, a bulk of carries in a game, and that could change week to week? Is it situational? How do you view how the distribution is going to play out?
It's always that way, but Saturday, we just want to let the guys play, and again, it'll be more streamlined now, I would imagine, because we're grading things. The guys know that it's going to be based on if you protect the ball, if you protect the quarterback, and if you can extend plays. So if you can do those three things, you're going to play more than guys that don't, and it's pretty simple. And then again, if a guy gets hot in the game, then we'll ride him because although we have packages of plays, everybody in the room is responsible for every offensive play. So if we get into a heavy package, that could be Vince. If we get into an empty package where we're throwing the football, that could be Sibley or any of those guys. So they're responsible for everything, but it's going to be guys who can help us win and play winning football.
Andre, in your experience as a special teams coach, how many times have you had a true freshman as your opening day return man, and how good can Jordan Addison be in that role?
Well, the first time I had one was at North Carolina, Brandon Tate. And, of course, Brandon Tate played with the Patriots and played with the Bengals, played a long time. And I was new at coordinating special teams in that era. And the guy who was handling the return game for me kept saying, "Hey, Brandon's the best. Brandon Tate's the best." I'm like, "Hey, dude, I'm not playing a freshman. It's out of the question." So as we got closer to the game, he convinced me Brandon was the guy. And if I'm not mistaken, the first touchdown he returned was a touchdown. So I'm confident with it. I like it a lot because if you get a guy that's trained and a guy that's confident at doing it, you got him for a number of years. So I'm good with it. He's smart. He can make good decisions with the football. I don't think he'll put us in harm's way. We've played some young guys back there before, and they've done some things that made it a little more difficult for us. But he's a very conscientious kid, and I think he's real smart, and I think he'll do a good job for us.
Coach, when you're dealing with this many running backs, you mentioned things like packages of plays. Do you look for differentiated skill sets? Do you look for, maybe this guy's really good at a certain part of the game, and then try to find a way how you can use that to get him into the game for at least a few plays, even if somebody else is going to get the bulk of the carries that day?
Well, to be honest, I like two kind of backs: big old good ones and good old big ones. You know what I'm saying? So, you look for guys. You look for the guys that can do the most things. You look for guys that can do things you can't coach. Okay, so like if a guy runs a 4.40, you can't coach that. So you look for guys that can do that. A guy that has a knack for breaking tackles. You look for those types of things. So again, everyone has five backs. You can go to any school in this conference, and they all have five backs. They may be staggered a little different in their ages, but everyone's got five. And I'm not for sure that you'll see five every week. And so I'm just happy. Some guys, they got five and they don't have five they can put in the game. We're very fortunate. We have five. We can put five in the game and still play winning football. So I'm not going to get, overly excited about the performance last week. Because soon as I got in the locker room, I started thinking about Syracuse, and so I was fortunate. We're fortunate. They played well, and we'll see how they play this week.
Andre, what's the unique challenge in trying to run against that 3-3-5?
Well, These guys present some unique challenges because they never sit still. They're always slanting and twisting and pressuring, and you got the secondary. Normally you want to get the ball to the edge and make the corner tackle, but their corners are gigantic in terms of corners. I mean, they're huge in the secondary, and of course they've got the safety who's all American. But they do a tremendous job making it difficult for you to get on track and target plays because of all the movement that they do. So that's a unique challenge for us.
Coach is always talking about getting 3% better. With the consistency of having an offensive coordinator for a second year, how much more can you advance with how much more does that open up the play opportunities and the comprehension of your backs and other skill players?
Well, I think it's, one of the things that being here for the second year is kids really understand the whys. We call a play and they have an assignment, and a lot of times they don't understand why. It's a reason why you, as a back, you run to the flat so you can open the curl. Before they just knew I run to the flat. They didn't understand I got to get my out there in a hurry so the quarterback can see if the flat defender does this, so on and so forth. So our guys have gotten better. They've really, grasped this offense, and I think all the coaches know now. We know how Whipple thinks, and we know how he goes about doing his business. So just like any new coordinator, you learn, you don't have to think like him, but you got to know how he thinks. You know what I'm saying? So I think everyone's a lot more comfortable, and again, with more maturity at the line and more maturity at my position, I think we can be more balanced and can do more things now.
I wanted to ask you about Todd Sibley, and he blocked the punt the other day. What does he bring as a special teams guy, and in addition to what he does in your running back room?
Well, Sibley can run. I mean, he can move. And Sibley, the only thing Sibley did was just exactly what we asked him to do: just rush and come off the edge of the shield and reach with his near hand. And Sibley's a smart kid. He's a conscientious kid. He plays on the punt team. He's a part of every special team except field goal and field goal block. And then when you get a group of kids that are smart and can understand conceptually and can play more than one position, that's just a plus. I mean, Sibley came into the game. He was a backup on punt return, and ended up being a special teams player of the game. He played on kickoff, made a tackle. He was a backup on kickoff and went right down the field and did exactly what he was supposed to do and made a tackle. And there was a number of other kids that did that. So I'm excited about the kids we have on special teams. We're probably the most talented group of kids we've had. Their attitude has been fantastic. They're in my office every morning trying to get a little bit better there. So they come out early and work on fundamentals. And we played a bunch of young guys. I think we played 9 true freshmen on special teams. So I'm excited about how those guys performing, and I think we can play a lot better.
Andre, what are your impressions early on after the redshirt year from Daniel Carter and what he can bring for you this year?
Well, obviously Daniel's a different dynamic than Vince. Daniel is probably more athletic than people would think, and he's got really good balance. He's got a low center of gravity, and Daniel really likes playing. And when you get a guy that can't wait to get the meetings, can't wait to get the practice, I mean, he's fun to coach. All those guys are fun to coach, and so he's got a bright future ahead of him. He can do a lot of things. He can be a good special teams player. Just lucky to have guys like that in your program.
Andre, Vince told us, or Vince called Izzy a freak, just the way that he can run and go from 0 to 100. I mean, what have you really seen from him? We got a little glimpse of it in spring camp, but throughout training camp and week 1 and kind of what you've seen on film.
He's different. He's different. Again, I mean, he can run. He's long. He runs with great power and leverage. But just like everything else, or like most freshmen, the running game part of Izzy's game, he has a good feel for. It's always the passing game. The number of protections and the adjustments based on the fronts and the blitzes, checking front side, backside, understanding you got to get to the flat, and it's a lot. They get bogged down a lot in the passing game. So we've got to invest more time with him, getting him caught up in the passing game. But when you turn around and hand him the ball, he can figure it out.